All right, and we should be live now. Hey folks, how's everyone doing? As always, Jonah, joined today by our good friend Tim Shields, founder of Cascade Games, uh, for our monthly Q&A. Good afternoon, Wolfstrider. How you doing today? So today we're gonna talk about. Well, what are we going to talk about? We talked about this 30 seconds ago, and I briefed you on this 30 seconds ago, and it's just gone now as soon as I start talking. As always. Oh.
What it takes to get hired for events. I think we'll probably take it from the opposite angle and talk a little bit about what you can do to make sure you're never hired at events. Um, and uh, and then we're gonna try and explain some of the context of judging and working events today. How's that?
Yeah.
I got it.
For the
Yeah,
first, 10 seconds, I had you muted for them, but hopefully the captions took care of that.
we're gonna talk about events. That's
Yeah.
what we're gonna do because that's a new one for us.
Yeah, we've never talked about events before, or our experiences, our history. So this is something that we've talked about a couple times on a few phone calls. How big of a nerd are you, Tim? I want you talk about my cred and point at the stuff behind me. Where are your minis? Where are your unpainted minis and your toys? I know you
Well,
have them.
yes, I do. Actually, you know what's funny is talking with you on this, and as you do that, I blushed. But yes, I have a generous collection of stuff. I'm a complete. I'm probably more of a geek than a nerd, but the fact that I can tell the difference between the two means I'm both. Um, but I have an office that I don't use a lot. And that's where my collection is. And I'm intense enough about this that I when I was in just starting college, and that's quite a long time ago, I was buying and selling comic books to help put myself through college. And then I made the foolish move of opening up a comic in a little bit game store. Um, because like how hard could that be, right? And then and then the comic market absolutely collapsed. It was so bad, and I was on the verge of going out of business. And a couple of the guys who hung out at my shop were play testing this game, and they showed me before it came out, and I was like, that's kind of cool. I might want to play that someday. And so I ordered as much as I could of this new game that was coming in called Magic the Gathering before it was released, right? And I received, instead of the cases that I ordered, I received an entire starter deck, one alpha starter deck. Yeah, that's what allocation looked like then. And then when beta came, I got like 3 boxes of beta, and I was so excited that those things sold in like days, so quickly. That was like a huge success for me, and my life has kind of just followed that trajectory ever since.
Just kind of stumbled your way here.
Well, I mean, okay, remember, when I say I'm old, right? I'm not the oldest person, but I'm almost 60, right? And so I grew up in a time when it was ridiculous to think that you could make a living in gaming.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think my parents think it's ridiculous. They're like, we're proud of you, but it's ridiculous that you're doing this.
And I mean, there was a video game industry. It didn't
Oh, yeah.
employ particularly many people, and tabletop was. I mean, the first time I went to like the national trade show Gamma for retailers, there were people there who were still using Ditto machines. Sorry, you can Google that to figure out that is. It's an obsolete technology for duplicating pages. and using Ziploc bags. They were Ziplocking bags, and they were selling rules in Ziploc bags that were run off on Dittos. The world has simply changed, and I, I never saw. I did all this entire way. I've been ready for the game industry to just go back to
Vanish.
what it's already. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because you can't make a living in games, right?
Right. No, not a chance.
Yeah. Anyway, that's enough about me for now. Let's talk. Actually, this is the part of the show where I tease you about the fact that you have your laundry basket over there.
Yeah,
Hey, Jonah, why are you showing everybody your laundry?
Because it's the middle of the week, and that's when I get to do laundry, because I'm not here on weekends, because I'm traveling places.
And where were you this weekend or
Uh,
this week?
this past week, I just got back from Minneapolis. There was regional qualifiers, and then I loved the weather so much I stayed for the rest of the week, and spent that entire time, except for the holiday, quartered up in FFG headquarters, Asmodee NA headquarters, working with the organized play team on talking about policy. Oh boy, did we talk a lot about policy.
My way of thinking about it is you have processed all the feedback you've received from judges, plus your life experience from running events. And we're trying to help them improve policy, which includes rule documents and everything that flows from that.
Yeah, it was. From one perspective, we did absolutely nothing productive. I think we wrote like maybe 0 words that anybody will see outside of the people who were in that meeting. Which doesn't sound very productive for 4 people locked in an office for a week. On the other hand, what we did do is look at the tournament regulations and the master event document, which guide all of how events are run. And we looked at pretty much every section and looked at how other games, both TCGs, other tabletop games, and digital games, handle various things. Talked about the philosophies behind them, what we liked, what we didn't like, what we could bring to Unlimited. Argued about it for a very long time. I've been in meetings, all sorts of meetings. These were some of the first meetings where we're like, every hour we're going to take a break. Not because, I mean, stretch breaks are good, but it's everybody in that room was so impassioned and had such strong arguments that we're like, we're arguing in circles. We need to take 5 minutes to step away, come back, and refocus the conversation, and look at it from new angles and take this time to figure out what we're doing. And we're looking at a complete overhaul. Don't have a timeline on it. This is, yeah.
But when you let's make this more concrete, okay?
Yeah.
And we're not talking about other game companies in any way, but when you say philosophy, okay?
Yeah.
Philosophy is probably the most nebulous term you could use. So, what is philosophy in the sense that you're using the word?
Philosophy is the why behind the what and the how. That's still somewhat nebulous.
Absolutely. I don't think that clarified it.
I'm going to narrow it down a little bit more. Look, I talked about this for 40 hours last week, plus some more time over like lunch and in the evenings. So I'm in that headspace. But when you run a tournament, simple thing, you're going to have a certain number of rounds in your tournament. Why do you have that number of rounds? The numbers chosen for that aren't arbitrary. There's a goal behind those numbers. There's a goal behind every aspect.
Let me just be I don't know. Let me pretend like I don't know.
I'm getting there.
Yeah, but hold on. So when you say there's a number, well, if I said, yeah, all I have to do is I go look at the chart on SwissTriangle.com and it tells me how many rounds to run. So isn't that easy to know how many rounds to run?
It depends. So with Top Cuts in particular, the goal there for many other places is we want to make sure that every player with a record of X and 1, so only 1 loss, is guaranteed to make it into that top cut. So then you can create mathematical calculators that tell you with this many players you want this many rounds. However, that question of, is that the cut that you want? What do you want to reward? Those are the conversations we have. Not what are the numbers, but why do we want to create this philosophy?
There you go. That's the word I was wanting you to say. The why you're doing things.
I said that.
Yeah, kind of.
I said that explicitly. I said the why behind the what and the how.
Yeah. So, for instance, why are we running this tournament? What is the goal? Okay. What is the goal for the tournament? Because we don't run tournaments just for the hell of it, right? There's a reason we do it. And there is a reason that when WizKids does a miniature event, it's 3, 4, or 5 rounds. And there is a reason that when a TCG company has a field of 2,000 players, that we break it up over multiple days and we do a particular number of rounds each day. And there's a reason behind all of that, right?
Yeah, there's a reason behind very, very little of this. In fact, pretty much nothing I can think of is arbitrary in this. Somebody thought about all of it. And policy as it exists now has been worked on by many very talented and intelligent people. But what happened is there wasn't a lot of overlap in those conversations, and the game evolved, and nobody has had the time and the space to go over and do a comprehensive overview to bring it all together. And so that's what we were doing. And so we're looking at every piece, bringing it all together. And it's, oh boy, it was a lot. Very excited for it. But...
Okay, and so what we can expect is at some point in the future, at some point in the near future, that there's going to be some significant policy changes. Refinements.
Refinement is the correct word. We looked at, there's going to be a lot of discussing. There have been a lot of questions from the community about pretty much every aspect of tournament regulations. How do we run top 8s? Can we run top 8s at these events? What's the difference between competitive and casual? How do we manage deck lists? How do we manage marked cards? How do we manage all sorts of errors? And what we want to do is, because there were places in policy that were sometimes self-contradictory and mutually exclusive, we're going to eliminate those and say, this is the way we're expecting to run things. And so it's a lot of cleaning it up, bringing it all together, and making sure that the vision of the designers, of the creators of the game, is enacted in tournaments. Because this isn't spoilers, this is just something that has been talked about before, but the goal of the game is fun, fair, satisfying gameplay that is a natural and organic outcome. We don't want to have corrupted games. And so that's what all of policy is going to be focused on. Having fun, fair, and satisfying games that have natural, organic outcomes, not determined by judge interference, ideally. Sometimes players corrupt the game and judges do have to interfere, and at that point you can't remove the corruption. But, I mean, the goal of organized play, just generally, what would you say the goal of organized play is?
Well, the problem is there's different goals, right?
What's the big goal?
Okay, this is going to get really esoteric. But the goal of organized play is to put a layer of meaning on top of the game. So you've got a game, right? You've got a game, be it chess, be it Star Wars, be it anything, right? Any game. You got a game, okay? And that game is fun. And my kids sometimes play with the cards by themselves, right? Sometimes my daughter will lay out cards and tell a story or whatever. And that's fine. But that is not the most robust way to experience the game, right? And then getting a couple people together and play is better than one person, right? Just in general. And But when we bring large numbers of people, what we do is we make the play more meaningful for everybody involved. It raises the stakes, it builds emotion, and it hopefully makes it more fun for everybody. But that part about fun's a really important piece too, right? And we should probably talk about that a little bit today, because 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 we inherit the Swiss-based structure from chess. There's cultural traditions that come with it, and one of those cultural traditions is we care a tremendous amount about precision. Specifically, we run the number of rounds that we run because we are trying to determine within that day who is the best player in the room.
Right.
Right? There is a tension between that. Some people love that, right? Some people really enjoy that. Particularly the person who wins really enjoys that.
Yeah.
Some people authentically love competition. But for a lot of the players of our game, take me for example. I'm never going to win a large tournament. It's never going to happen. I'm never going to put the time and energy into studying the meta. And, I do fine at pre-releases. And then as time goes on, my skill relative to the rest of the field declines because I'm quick to learn, but I'm not good enough at any of the games. Okay. And that means that for someone like me to keep playing, we have to have an event that's a lot of fun. And the challenge for judges is you are facilitators of fun, right? You're not just facilitating rules, you're facilitating rules to put meaning on top of this, but you're there to make this fun. And the tension and the problem is what is fun for me is very different than what is fun for some of the other players.
Yep.
And there are more people who are like me about this than people who authentically like competition for the sake of competition, at least at most events. Maybe not at Galactic Champs, maybe, but actually probably even at Galactic Champs.
I mean, there are a lot of people who care about the game and enjoy playing the game, and that's why they're participating. And there are stakes, and they care about the stakes, but they don't care about the act of that competition itself. That's not their driving motivator. There's some investment, of course, but for me, part of the goal of organized play is to get players invested in wanting to come back. That's also just a very broad, high level.
Although I would say that's a measurement more than a goal. Okay, for me. So how do we know when we're succeeding? People are coming back, right? I mean, if you, I don't know, what's something extreme and crazy. If you broke everybody's legs and so they couldn't leave the tournament, they'd still be there for the next day, but that wouldn't be a successful thing, right?
Probably not. No.
So the goal is to make people to help people, because you can't make them, help people have a good enough experience that they are eager to come back to the next one.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to measure this, is the community where you're locally judging, right? And that could be your local store, or that could be a convention or whatever. Do more people come back year over year? If they do, you're probably doing a good job. And if it's not, if it's shrinking, somebody is not doing their job right.
Yeah. I mean, so how can we help build our communities? How can we as judges create
the
that
first
fun?
thing we don't do what Wolf Strider commented on, because I'm actually reading the comments today, and we don't break the people's legs.
That's a good start. That one I hope goes without saying. Also, don't break their arms. That's also no
breakage, no breakage at all. Do you want to go into, actually, we probably shouldn't go too far into how to do this today. Well, hold on. Well, maybe we should go a little bit into it. Here's the thing. Jonah and I really need to beat a drum about this. Okay. And it became very clear around, well, actually, there at some of the judge conferences that I went to, and just in general, there is a certain amount of confusion. Sorry, we got tape and rope. Sorry, that I shouldn't have read the comments. Anyway, there's confusion about what tournament organizers want. What tournament organizers?
Confusion. I would say misaligned expectations.
Would you? I would say confusion twice, but okay, explain your misaligned expectations theory.
I think a lot of where this is coming from is folks who haven't been in this role before, and so they don't know what to expect from really any participants in this community. Folks don't know what to expect from tournament organizers, from players, from other judges, from judge programs, from publishers. There are a lot of folks who are coming to Unlimited as their first TCG, as their first experience judging, and so they have expectations coming from other games or from other ecosystems that aren't games at all, using those expectations.
Okay, sure. Especially when we say coming from other games.
Yeah, and folks are very clear this is the way it is. It's just misaligned with what other folks are expecting, and those are the folks who are running the events.
And unfortunately, the tournament organizer gets to win.
The tournament organizers and the publishers have a lot more say in this than we do.
Absolutely, because after all, they're the ones signing the check and they're the ones hiring people. And if we don't fit what the TO wants, then we're not going to get brought on board, or we're not going to get brought back. And that is, and that's just the reality of it. And now I'm going to trying to wear two hats. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up on the comments, but the reality of it is, when I'm a tournament organizer, I want people who are charismatic and fun. Okay. I want staff who are going to, if I had to choose, and I don't want to have to choose between two extremes, right? A continuum. I don't want to say on one side there's people who are rules experts and on the other side there's people who are experts in fun, because the reality is there's plenty of people who are great at both, and there are plenty of people who are good at neither, right? And I really don't want somebody who is bad at rules and no fun, right?
Yes.
That person can just go home at the start of the day. As soon as we figure that one out, it's all done, okay? But the fun piece is so much more important than the rule piece.
Yeah. A player can in my experience, a player can very quickly get over a bad ruling. After their match, they'll talk to a friend. Their friend will say, that was wrong. They talk to another judge. They say, that sucks. I feel bad about that. And then they go play another game. And if they're generally having fun, and particularly if they talk to the judge in question, the judge is apologetic and says, you're right, I was incorrect. Thank you for letting me know. Or in an ideal world, the judge comes to them after giving the ruling. In the ideal world where they have already given a bad ruling, ideally no bad rulings, but if you give a bad ruling, the ideal fix for the players, as soon as you find out, you come back to them and say, hey, I made a mistake. What can has this impacted your game? What can we do to correct it? How can we make your experience better? Because it's about the overall experience. I have definitely said untrue things to players, walked away, talked to a friend and been like, I had this real weird call. I said this, and my friend looks at me like I've grown 2 or 3 extra heads. And then they point out either the rule that is right below the one that I read, or a word on the card that says when defeated instead of when played, and I'm like, wow, I got that one wrong. Or they point out like just a general misunderstanding I had, not even something like that. And I'm like, oh, that's significant. Go right back to the table, say, hey, I made a mistake. Let's get this back on track. And players are frankly more appreciative of me correcting bad calls than they are of me giving good calls, which is good positive reinforcement. I'm glad that they are supportive of me correcting myself. But it leads to that better experience, and sometimes they'll talk to you about, hey, how come you ended up giving that bad ruling in the first place? And we can talk about that, talk about the impact it could have had on the match and that sort of thing.
Do you, and I'm curious how you handle this personally. When you mess up a rule like that,
yeah,
do you alert your tournament organizer?
It depends. If it causes like if I give a ruling and I say, no, that beats Crate Dragon won't trigger, it won't be able to deal the damage, then I walk away, talk with somebody real fast, or read something real fast, and then turn on my heel and say, wait, I was wrong, and I'm able to fix it before it impacts the game? No, generally not. If it impacts the game, but it's relatively minor, like the player played the card and I was like, sorry, I was wrong, you can take that back because I gave you bad information. Again, probably not. If it's very disruptive to the game, if a player is going to lose a game because of my bad ruling, at the very least I get the head judge involved and be like, hey, I have made a problem for you to solve. Or not necessarily a problem for you to solve, but I have made a problem. I will do what I can to solve it myself, but I don't necessarily have the power to do that because this player is liable to be very upset, and reasonably so, because I have just made them lose a game that they weren't going to lose.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but the key part is, here's how to get hired. Okay. Here's how to get hired at an event. Okay. Make the tournament organizer believe that you're going to make the customers happy. Okay. And if you're not getting hired for events on a regular basis, there is an excellent chance that what's going on is that you're making the tournament organizer afraid that you care more about policy than you do about players.
There are a lot of, I think, things that meet the metric of not making customers happy, right? Something that I see in a lot of folks is, particularly at larger events, on side events where you have a lot going on, if you're liable to get easily distracted and forget about an event and not turn over around, and players are just sitting there twiddling their thumbs doing nothing for 20 minutes, a half hour, waiting to play their next round, if that happens, that's come up. But also,
sure,
like,
absolutely.
If you are out there enforcing the law like a death trooper, that leads to unsatisfied players.
Well, and there are games and there are judge programs for, I don't know, there are subsets of judge programs where they really do have the attitude that, hey, everybody's a cheater and I'm here to bust everybody because they're all cheaters. That is not at all what we want. And I say that as a TO and also in communication with all the major tournament organizers and the publisher. That's just not where we're coming from.
I think that if you believe everyone is a cheater, you will in fact find more people who are cheating and disqualify more people who are cheating. I think you will also disqualify many, many more players who made innocent mistakes. The more aggressive you are on that front, the more collateral damage you're going to have. And there's a question that I think all judges should ask and answer of themselves, which is, how many innocent players am I willing to disqualify in order to make sure that I disqualified one cheater or every cheater? Like, if you want to make sure that you have no cheaters in your event, disqualify everybody, and you've done it. You don't have any cheaters in your event. Perfect event. No tournament fraud has occurred. That is a perfect event.
Okay, and I got to answer a comment from the chat.
Yeah.
Because Bobby Sapphire, see, I even referred to the person by name.
We're learning, Tim.
Yeah, baby steps, baby steps. Bobby Sapphire wanted to know, when I'm using I'm using me, right? I am a tournament organizer. I'm not a super active one. I've taken a step back from it, but part of my history is that I am one of the more, I've run more tournaments than nearly anyone, right? There's a few people, right? There's Alan Hockman has run more, Pete Hofling has run more. There are folks who have run more than me, but I have run an
You've been running events since '93.
Yes, and so
to answer the question,
so when I was saying that, I meant not as the judge program. I meant as a tournament organizer.
Judge.
Well, I meant as an individual tournament organizer. So what am I looking for? But I'm also speaking for all the other TOs now.
Yeah, so the you that you're talking about is a judge looking to be hired by a tournament organizer.
There you go. Yes.
Gentle Giant 303, yes, we do sometimes answer questions on this stream. It sometimes just takes us a half hour to get from the beginning of the question to the end of the answer.
Yes.
But yeah, if you have more questions on that vein, please feel free to ask. Again, we've been doing a lot of talking, not a ton of questions today, which is perfectly fine. We have made it a clear half hour with, at this point, 1 or 2 questions. We don't need a ton of help going for a full hour.
But we could, if we were just rambling, I would feel bad about this, but this is a crucial thing. And there has been, there are all kinds of feelings around who's getting hired to work at Galactic Champions, right?
And other events, sectors, regional qualifiers, planetary qualifiers all over the world.
Yeah, and what we talked about a couple months ago was how shitty it is, and I think that's a fair word for it, of if you are not getting hired for an event, okay, no one will ever tell you why you didn't get hired. And as one of the people in the stream pointed out that day, that's just unfair, right? We're supposed to be creating a learning community, and feedback is the foundation of a learning community. And if you as a judge are not getting hired, somebody should tell you why. Because if they don't tell you why, how are you going to know what to do to improve? And what that runs into, unfortunately, is labor law, at least in the United States. I'm no expert. I'm not an attorney, right? But I'll fake it for a little bit. And I certainly don't know European law, for instance. But in the United States, every HR department everywhere, every employment attorney tells you, don't just tell people we have chose you or we have not selected you. Never get into the reasons. And it's awful because that destroys a learning culture. But having said that, no one is ever going to tell you why. And so if no one tells you why you're not hired, it's really easy to then make up in your own mind, reasons for why I didn't get hired. And it turns out those reasons will be based on your fears, not reality, because you can't mind read. And so Jonah and I are trying to answer that question, right? Which is, why didn't you get hired? Okay. Well, ultimately, the balance, every TO who knows what they're doing. There are some people who are brand new who don't know to do this. But if you are an experienced TO, what you're doing is you're saying, You're evaluating every staff person based on their ability to create a great play environment. And we have lots and lots of classes to teach you how to do that from a rules perspective and blah, blah, blah. We've got all this content, and Jonah's coming out with more of it. Having said that, Jonah hasn't taught you how to be fun yet.
I've had some lessons on talking about that customer service aspect. I know I've mentioned this before somewhere, either on a broadcast, in the Discord, or in a lesson, but the way you as a judge interact with players is, I cannot emphasize how impactful it is to players. Players are scared of you. As if you're wearing a judge shirt, players are terrified of you.
Absolutely.
If you sit down next to a match, players will look at you and then be scared. It doesn't matter how friendly you are, how cuddly you are. And so whenever I sit down next to a match, I'm like, look, I've been standing for the last 8 hours. My legs are tired. I just want to watch some Unlimited because it's a great game. And that doesn't actually calm them down, but at least lets them believe that it's not a judge who is looming over them, telling them that they're about to screw up. But the story that I want to tell is I have had players swear at me because I told them that we made a scorekeeping error, and they are not in fact in 9th place, they are in fact in 8th place and have made top cut. This was when I was less experienced and I was a little bit more blasé about it, and they were upset that how dare the tournament be run in such a slipshod manner that this could have happened. If this hadn't been brought up, I would have been cheated out of this. How dare you? And I was telling this player good news. I have also had players thank me while I was disqualifying them. And that sometimes you're going to have a player who isn't going to listen to you or respond well to you no matter what you do. You can do your best. You can be the most approachable, kind person in the world, and they won't respond positively. But you can genuinely make people feel better about game losses that they're earning, warnings that they're earning, errors that they make. Players feel bad about screwing up. Players don't like making mistakes. The number of times I've come to a match, particularly in Star Wars, and a player's like, Judge, I made this mistake. I get a game loss, right? I'm like, no. We can fix this. And they're like, no, I think I should just lose this game. I forgot to put a damage on a thing, and it changed my opponent's plan. I'm like, we can just let them make a different play and tell you not to do it again and change the number. That we can just go back 10 seconds. I know you've gained a little bit of information. I know that you now know that they have a card. You don't need to lose this game for that.
So Mightstone, hold on, Mightstone.
Oh, yeah, we have a lot of things that I want to get to.
Sure. Mightstone says, I spoke to multiple TOs across the globe for an article I'm writing, and they have one thing in common, is they care about the experience that players are having. If a TO, let me just say something polarizing for a second, but if a TO doesn't care about the player experience, they should be fired. Really. I know that's not your job to fire them, but if they don't care about the player experience, they are going to deliver an awful event, and they should go find something else to do. Just full stop.
Quick tangent to answer Mad Dog Mac's question, which came before that. Any talk about IDing or working with friends that are doing well in the tournament? That was a hot topic. If you're talking about it on the stream, not yet. We can talk about that a little bit. If you're talking about my meeting at FFG, that falls under tournament regulations and the master event document. We talked about everything in those documents and a lot of stuff that isn't in those documents. But I also like Mad Dog Max's TV's other question, which is for Tim, but I want to answer it because I have opinions. Do you care about a cheater's tournament experience, like 100% proven deserved disqualification? My answer is yes. A lot of players who cheat are not malicious players. They are players who cheated, not players who came to the event premeditated. They're like, I'm going to cheat in this way and I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. It's very, very frequently, I made a mistake. I'm worried about the consequences of bringing attention to it. It wasn't that big anyways. I just won't call attention to it. Attention has been called to it. I'm going to try and dig myself out of this hole. Oh no, I'm deeper in this hole. I can't get out. And they get disqualified. Or just like a player who's like, I think these cards are marked, and I know that it might be a problem, but I don't want to get new cards. I'm going to play with these cards or these sleeves. It should be fine. These are players who are doing something illegal, getting advantage from it, and knowing that it's illegal. But when you talk to them, like, I want to disqualify this player. I want them to take their disqualification seriously. And I want them to come back to the next tournament and not repeat the behavior. Because these players are not malicious. These players they see an opportunity and they have a moment of weakness.
Okay, let me take a different tact on it, because after all, he asked me, and by the way, yeah, and so okay, I'm really having a hard time not making a smart ass comment about the typo in it though, but I'll let that slide for a second. So here's the fundamental thing, okay? I could have a hypothetical conversation with you about whether or not there are actually bad people in the world versus good people, right? We could explore that at length, and you might think there's bad people and you might think there's good people. I don't know. But part of my life journey was I assumed there was no way to make a living in this crazy field called gaming. And so I went and got my degrees in psychology, and I was a psychologist for a while. Luckily, I quit that.
And got into the far more lucrative field of gaming.
Actually, on a good day, I got to tell you, Jonah, if you break the world's record for largest tournament,
that is a good day.
The first time we did that, we had 12,300 people in a room paying nearly $100 a piece. That was a fine day, and I promise you, nobody in the wonderful world of psychology has that. But having said that, I mean, there was also unbelievable risk attached to that event. Whew, I was so scared. Anyway, but that's for a different day. Okay, you need to make a decision of your personal philosophy as a judge. Okay, I think what you're doing is facilitating a community. I think part of what happens to people in communities is they make mistakes. Sometimes they even make malicious mistakes. In my mind, my line on this is if people are violent, I don't ever tolerate that. And in general, violent people don't get to come back ever. Okay. Certainly, I mean, I have allowed people to come back sometimes, but usually there's something like a decade of ban attached to it, right? I mean, it is literally a decade. That's a serious thing. Cheating at cards is not good. I am not endorsing it in any way, but I believe in redemption. I believe people make mistakes, and I believe we ring them up and apply penalties for them. And then I believe they learn sometimes, not always. And so I've done things like, you're out of this tournament today. I am going to report this to the publisher. You are going to be out of this game for some period of time. And you may not play in any of my events, period, because they're my events, not the publisher's events. You can't, even when your suspension is done, you can't play in anything until you write me an essay explaining what you did wrong, what you learned, and what you're going to do next time differently. And that kind of thing. So I really want to use events as a way to help people reform and become better people.
I want to build off something you said, because you were talking about how you look at it as an overall community experience, right? Our goal is to make sure that the community has the best overall experience. That's why we disqualify cheaters. If we were looking at every individual's personal experience, we would let the cheater win because that person is happiest when they're winning, right? And so we
but need they're to really not.
Generally,
anyway, go ahead.
But our goal is the overall health and positive experience of the community. And so in some cases, yeah, you have to disqualify a player, but when you do, they are still a person. They are still worthy of an amount of respect. And something that Tim told me years ago, I was stressing out about an event we were working on. And Tim asked me, what is the worst thing that happens at this event? Do you remember what your answer was?
I don't.
Your answer was somebody has a little bit less fun playing games at this event. That's not the genuine worst case scenario. Like, we could go deep and be like, yeah, something real bad happens. But from my actions, if I screw up as a judge or a judge manager, somebody has a little bit less fun playing a game for a day. The stakes that we're working on are not the highest. Even on the larger stages, when there are significant prizes in play, nobody's
absolutely.
doing this for a living. This isn't somebody's job or livelihood at stake. Playing the game, that is. And having a little bit of grace for others, giving a space for players to reform and learn from their mistakes, I think is hugely important.
Because, among other things, the people who are playing, many of them are not adults yet. And I know they're over 18, but you know what? That's just not how it works. People aren't done being formed, right? I mean, maybe we're never done. Hopefully we're all learning as we go through our whole life, but they're not done. And so I've had people that I've kicked out. We, reported to the publisher for cheating. And then years later, they come back and they thank me and they tell me that they learned something really important from it.
Yep.
And that, to me, is a much more important thing. That's more important.
There was a player, in the community around where I played college, who had played some other TCGs, did really well in them, came over to, at the time, Magic, got caught cheating, was disqualified, and was banned from several local stores because of it. And then 6 months later they were allowed back in because it was a first offense. They were relatively young, and they are now a well-respected TCG. I think they've taken a little bit of a hiatus because they're now an adult. This was so long. I'm old now. But they came back and they're like, I have made mistakes. This is in my past. I'm not going to hide from it, but I am absolutely not going to do it again. And I think we're not out here to punish people. We're not out here to punish players. That's not our goal. Our goal is to make the games fun and fair. We want to disincentivize cheating. We want to make sure people have fun. We want to make sure that people who do cheat aren't participating, because that's not fair. But we don't want to punish them. We want them to learn.
And so let's circle back to what people have been talking to me about, which is the secret of how do I get hired.
Yeah.
Right? Don't talk about the rules. Talk about the people. Talk about the players. And for that matter, if it's less important with some Star Wars events and more important at others, but the family, the families of the people who aren't playing, they matter too, right? There's an overall experience. And I would agree with Tennessee Feet Monk. Penalties teach players and DQs teach players fast. They do. It's just we don't have a lot of control over what the message that they learn from that. They will learn something because it's a very powerful punishment. But man, you got to be careful. You got to be judicious, right?
I have so many friends who got a game loss, and the lesson they learned was, don't play in events.
I'm done. Yep.
Play at home.
Well, because if I get a game loss and I don't know why I got it,
or if it doesn't make sense to you, even if you're told why it is.
Right. So part of this job is hopefully you're giving people enough context to understand why they, you know, why they're being removed, right? Why they're getting the penalty. What does it mean? You have that um uh, um, number one learning, don't get caught. No, I mean, number one learning should be, well, I won't even get into it. So back to how to get hired, okay? Because that's something all of you should care about, okay? Talk about the players, talk about the player experience. Talk if they ask you for to tell a story about a time you've been a judge, tell a story about a time you did something that was remarkable in terms of customer service, right? Don't talk about the most complicated ruling that you figured out and how your rules mastery is superior. And therefore, I mean, I literally have had people tell me, you must hire me for this event. I am the most experienced person in the area and I have the best rules knowledge. Well, okay, maybe, but can you make people happy? Can you get my players to come back? Or, experience does count. Experience matters. But, I'd rather have somebody who was an experienced high school teacher who knew how to manage groups of people, who had a decent rules knowledge, than somebody who was the best rules person in the world and could not bring the fun. Bring the damn fun. That's what I'm trying to say.
At the local level, the thing that tournament organizers, I mean, the thing that any tournament organizer wants to see at any scale is building community, players getting invested, right? The way you do that at the local level is be a part of the community. If you just show up to a store and say, hey, hire me, I'm a judge, 9 times out of 10, they'll say, nah, we're good. If you play in their weekly plays and pre-releases, if you talk to players, if you are at drafts and help the new player out, if you're at pre-release and say after a match, hey, do you want to can I look at your pool and see if we can come up with a better deck, or can you help me build my deck better, look at my pool, and you engage with the community, tournament organizers, event managers, staff are going to recognize that you are a part of the community and you belong there and you are invested in its growth and success, and people having a good time. If you show up, play your game, don't talk to anybody, then leave, that doesn't demonstrate a care for fun as much.
It doesn't show any care for fun, right? I mean,
it's your own fun. Zero sum. The less fun they're having, the more fun I'm having.
Yeah, I mean, really, the tension, I think, is people who are judges. You have to hold yourself separate, right? You've got to manage this impartiality thing, right? You really do. But you've got to be impartial, but also allow people to connect with you emotionally. And that's not easy to do, right? It is a difficult challenge. But this thing is all about it. Life is all about emotional connection. It just is. Okay.
You actually have a deadline this time, so we're going to try and hold ourselves to an hour. We've got a couple minutes left. If any folks have any last-minute questions, clarifications on what we've been talking about. Otherwise, I'm going to kick you out of here so you can get to what you have
But I don't want to.
We can have another broadcast later.
Okay.
Benny B. Benny asks, will there be a judge meetup at Spielessen? I think that's in late October.
And I would say it's 95% likely.
We don't have anything planned. I don't have anything on my calendar after Galactics. I think you have
TwitchCon, and there will be a meetup, something around TwitchCon. And by the way, I mean, I don't know how many people will be able to come, but I'll do something at San Diego Comic-Con. I'll do a judge meetup. although most of you will be at Galactic Championships. And um, yeah, and the answer, will Jonah be? Hey, Jonah, are you going to be at the Galactic Championship?
I am going to be at the Galactic Championships. I haven't actually booked my flights yet, and I need to do that sooner rather than later, but I also need to lock down what days I'm there. I'm probably going to be arriving Wednesday so that I can do training and meetups on Thursday before the event starts. Mad Dog Max TV asking for the details on the GC meetup. The loose plan, not locked in yet, is Thursday after judge training at the venue, but I haven't gotten that secured. We might have to meet somewhere else in town.
And what will you be doing at the Galactic Championship, Jonah?
I'll be judging it.
Wow, it's really hard for you to say the word head judge, isn't it?
Yeah, huh?
Watch Jonah turn red. Yes, Jonah will be our head judge for that. And I'll be at Comic-Con getting my nerd on. So, although Comic-Con rejected the panel that I was going to be on, so I'm not going to be on a panel, and I'm bummed.
We should do one of those sometime. Just story time about judging at some point.
Yes, but
they'd have to book the room for like the day, but
I have a story about that, but not for today. So those are the now I'll send just an email out to the folks who are doing San Diego with me, but I just got a goodie for them. Let's see, what else do we have to cover today? So talk about the times you've done customer service well. Think about this in terms of customer service. One of the people earlier in the chat was talking about how they learned customer service from restaurant work. Yeah, restaurant work.
Retail,
nuts. Retail's great.
Education, coaching.
Yeah. All of those. Sports are great. Those are but what we want, think about the teachers you've had who are really good and what they did to facilitate the class, right? You're still in charge, right? I'm not saying anything to soften that. You're in charge. You have a stewardship responsibility. And yes, that includes removing people from the event sometimes, right? You are in charge. And therefore, it is your job to make a great experience for everybody that you can. Yeah.
To answer a couple quick questions from Mad Dog Max.
Go ahead.
How many judges do we have for the Galactic Championship? I don't believe that knowledge. I don't have that knowledge, so I don't have a hard number on that. And do we have
It's a shit ton.
You've done it before.
It's a bunch.
Do we have any numbers on tickets sold or attendance? I know those numbers. I don't know if those numbers are public, so I'm not going to say them.
Let's say
a lot.
It's done very, very well. I was wrong. I didn't think they were going to hit their number, and they've done very, very well. Very well. In fact, I look at the success of that, and I'm like, man, this game is doing, like, it's great proof of life, right? This number the number is really solid. You're going to like it.
Fantastic. I'm not seeing any other questions, so thank you all for your time. Tim, thank you for joining me.
Wait, you forgot the curious to judge to player ratio, but you'll know eventually, but it's very...
I don't know the number of judges, and I can't tell you the number of players. Oh, boy.
Well, and the problem with the number of judges is a bunch of judges got hired for customer service roles as well, which, again, that's what we want. We want you to be good at customer service. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.
Our next broadcast will be this Friday, covering some number of lessons, because I haven't been around in a week and a half. I'm probably not going to get through all of them, because it takes me a half hour, 45 minutes for one, and there's like 5 that I need to talk about, so I don't want to sit there for 5 hours. We'll just talk about those lessons in the future, and we'll be back next month with another Q&A with our good friend Tim. All right, folks, talk to you later. Bye.